Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Cup Interviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I will be your host for this episode, Ryan Borochovitz, and I'm joined today by two artists who are currently about to bring Toronto a very exciting production of Dangerous Liaisons, or Les Liaisons Dangereuses, pardon my French, by Christopher Hampton, which is being produced by the company Wren Theatre at the Annex Theatre here in the Annex, where I'm currently located. So I'm excited to see this show that's so close to home. So I'm joined today by the artistic director of Wren Theatre, Tatum, who is the director of this production, and Lizzie Moffatt, who is acting and serving as intimacy director in this production. Tatum and Lizzie, hi, how are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us. We're excited.
So excited to be here.
Yes, well, we're so excited to have you. I'm excited to talk about the show and excited to see the show. But before we get too deep into any of it, I have to ask our favorite icebreaker question. What is in your cups today? Tatum, you came out gunning with it, so you could go first.
Walk us through it.
Latte. And it was made by my bestie. I'm in his condo right now, Andy Liberopoulos. Shout out. Hello. My internet was acting up this morning, so I need to come over to your house.
Always good to have a backup plan. Contingency is important. And what a nice drink you got in your friend's place. So that worked out really well. How about you, Lizzie? What's in your cup?
Well, I'm not trying to be a keener, but I do have two cups here with me today. To keep with the period piece of it all, I have a little teacup here.
Saucer, nice.
Lovely. Just filled with water, though. I wish the beverage was as interesting as the container. And I also have some coffee here with me today.
Coffee, water, perfect. So yeah, you have interesting things.
Can't have one without the other.
Perfect. I will also confess that my mug is filled with water as well, because 5 minutes before we started the recording, I was like, oh, right, I don't have time to make anything more interesting. So I just dumped some water in our signature, the cup. Hey, that's lovely. The show you are on right now.
It's the theater magic of it all.
Exactly.
People think it's something else.
Yes. It's the prop illusion. People are rarely getting hammered on stage, even when their characters are. So
usually I drink my coffee and my morning drink is in like a witch cup. I have like this witch cup, which I would normally be holding right now, but I'm not at my house. So
that's okay. You still got an exciting drink, even if the receptacle is less enchanted than you might hope. So. Okay, so before we get into Dangerous Liaisons specifically, I'd like to start with a little bit about you two. We don't want to just be promotional about your show. You are artists. You are working hard to create art in this industry, in the city. So let's begin with you. So why don't you tell us a little about yourselves? Maybe how you first got into theater, some relevant training, influences, experiences, projects, and/or credits. I always like to say the floor is yours to describe your identities as theater people, however you please. Who would like to start?
I can go first. My background in theater started when I was very young, I think around 5. My Nana, she actually owned a costume shop that was called Janelle Creations in Hamilton, Ontario. And I grew up just playing in there growing up and helping her make costumes and get into different characters. And she always made me feel like I had a very special role of checking out the mortician waxes and making sure that the scabs that we would create for customers, that like it was up to the standards. So I felt I had a very important job. So I think that's where it started for me, with imagination and all of that. And then literally in kindergarten, I started directing plays. That was the first play I directed. I did The Wizard of Oz, and it's just been like a slow build from there. And then I remember I saw the production of the Phantom of the Opera that was in Toronto. I had never seen anything so spectacular in my life. I just was completely blown away by the sets, the costumes, the acting. It was spectacular. So that gave me the acting bug for sure.
So you're saying that your juvenile production of The Wizard of Oz didn't quite live up to the standard of the Phantom of the Opera, if you had never seen anything like that before?
It was an epic production that I do feel you missed, Ryan. You should have been there, but it was, yeah. No, it was.
Did it have a chandelier?
Yeah, we'll do a remount.
Yes, maybe that'll be Wren's next production, remounting that childhood Wizard of Oz.
That would be a really interesting idea, actually, because I had one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me in my childhood life happened during that show. And it was the first swear word I ever said. And it was because I forgot what I was supposed to be doing in the second part of the play. And I said, Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
We try to keep it PG-13, i.e. one F-bomb per episode, but if you want to use it now, that's fine.
No, that's fine. It's unnecessary. I said a swear word, and my parents were there. My Nana was there. The whole school was there, and they were all like, and I was like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. I didn't know what I had done, but I knew that it was really bad.
That's how most of us learn what swearing is.
Yeah.
And that was when I learned about shame.
Oh, wow.
Some people just aren't ready for bold theater.
Yeah, that's right. You're in your face, provocative right out of the gate.
Wizard of Oz.
Okay, thanks for sharing all that, Tatum. Lizzie, how about you? What was your theater journey thus far?
Yeah, it's funny. I also started my theater journey when I was 5.
It's a good age.
Yes, it's a good age to get started. Would recommend. I have an aunt who I already thought was like the coolest adult that I had in my life, but was also an actor, also named Lizzie, funnily enough. And I remember being 5 and watching her in an Ottawa, like in the park production of Romeo and Juliet. I think she was doing the balcony scene, and I was bitten by the bug right away. I was like, how do I start doing this? I want to get involved. I was also very shy as a kid. So my parents enrolled me, and it's kind of started like the longest love story ever for me. I find like theater is where I go to learn more about myself, but also it's become such a great immediate way to learn about other people and connect with them. So I kept with theater throughout high school. Then I received my undergrad at Queen's University for drama, which was a cool way to learn about theater making rather than just acting. Kingston, Ontario doesn't have a lot of conventional theater spaces. So it was a lot of me and my classmates putting up shows in record shops and coffee shops and bars or anywhere that would take us. That's where I would say I really fall in love with like multidisciplinary works. I'm really passionate about movement theater and devised physical work. And then when I moved back into the city, I studied briefly at George Brown's Acting Conservatory. And I've been in the city since, doing shows with Toronto Fringe, doing shows with Wren, kind of just wanting to be a part of creating things that people can gather and connect over. And it's like the most rewarding thing in the world.
Yeah, speaking of Toronto Fringe, while I was doing some preparatory research for this interview, it occurred to me that you were in a show that we on the Cup reviewed at this past Fringe, Girls' Night Cabin Fever, which I unfortunately didn't get to see, but my 2 colleagues both saw it and gave it a very excited review. So maybe that's showing up at the top of the screen if you're watching this on YouTube right now.
I think I was looking up, I saw Mackenzie's name and I was like, why does that name sound familiar? But this is such a full circle thing. It's a very fun show to do. Love Toronto Fringe. Yeah, that is so funny.
Okay, so Wren Theatre, let's talk a little bit more about this company. So Tatum, you founded it in, I believe, 2015. I feel like there's some conflicting reports about what the year is, and maybe you can help untangle some of this. But you have 2015 listed in some places, and you've been serving as the artistic director ever since. Tell us a bit about the company's origin story and its journey thus far.
Yeah, so I founded it in 2015 under the name Tandem Entertainment. And that's where probably the confusion comes in, is actually my best friend, Andy, whose house I'm at right now. We founded that theater company in 2015, and we did an original play called State of Women that he wrote and we co-produced together. The idea originally was to do original works that the 2 of us had come up with together. We did 2 runs of that show back to back, and then we were getting ready to do our next show, and I ended up booking a film. And then it seemed like there was like one thing after another that just kind of stopped that from taking off. And then COVID obviously shut down the world, and there goes like 4 years, So when I came back from that, I was thinking, I want to run this theater company, and what do I want it to be about? There's a lot of classic plays that I want to do that aren't original pieces. And obviously Tandem implies 2 people. So it was rebranded as Wren. So we've really been active for about 4 years, but as Wren for the last 3.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. That does clarify some of that confusion. So classic works, old plays, that's kind of the programming mandate. What motivates you to take on those types of works?
I mean, there's just so many great plays that I've wanted to put my little stamp on, So it's not something that I'm going to be solely focusing on at Wren, but we do have a lot of plans to bring some classic literary works to the stage. But we've got a couple of originals that are coming over the next few years that will be very exciting. So yeah, not all classic pieces.
Gotcha. Okay. And Lizzie, when did you first become involved in the company?
I only got involved with Wren Theatre last season on their production of Little Women. My agent had noticed that I was really craving being back in theater because as fun as film and TV is, just theater is where you feed your soul. And so she recommended Wren Theatre, had nothing but fantastic things to say about them and how brilliant Tatum is, which is still very true to this day. Couldn't agree more. A few weeks after that conversation of you should look into what they're doing next, I got a self-tape request to audition for Meg in Little Women. That ended up being the right fit. And I will say very easily, it was one of the most rewarding, magical experiences that I have had in a rehearsal room, getting to bring a show to life. It's one that I know for a fact I'll look back on so fondly. And I just think the reason I'm so excited to be back working with Wren again is that they have this great ability to balance like care and curiosity in their theater making while also being quite daring. So it's a lot of pieces that audiences will be familiar with, but it has the opportunity to completely redefine your relationship with it. Wren is quite uncompromising in what they envision for a show, and it makes it very creatively fulfilling to work with them and with Tatum.
Very nice. Speaking of redefining your relationships to these works, I have to ask, is Meg the Little Woman that you always resonated with the most, or did you find a resonance once you got cast in that role?
I had a great experience with it because I love Little Women. I grew up on it. And so I found at different parts in my life, I had connected with a different sister, depending on where I was. And so I had yet to find that connection with Meg. And so it served as a really full circle opportunity to do it. Definitely relate to the older sister vibe. So I don't know how the connection didn't happen sooner, but right. we found a way.
Amazing. Okay, so speaking of classical works or works that have a connection to the classical literary canon, your upcoming production, Dangerous Liaisons, or I'll say it terribly in French again, no, I shouldn't. I can't. Sorry.
Dangereuses.
Well, thank you. Merci beaucoup. Apologies to Leclos. Apologies to Christopher Hampton, who insisted on the French title.
French listeners.
To all of our French listeners. So there's just so much I'd love to ask you about this show. But to begin, for those who are unfamiliar with the play, or let alone its literary source, could you please give an elevator pitch of what it's about and why do you think folks should come see it?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say the elevator pitch would be that it is about two aristocrats in the 18th century, right before the French Revolution, who are willing to manipulate, scheme, and seduce their way through their lives for personal gain to get what they want out of life, which unfortunately is at the expense of so many people's sanity, lives. You know, it's a juicy play that really like leaves you guessing what's going to happen the whole way through. It's a definite ride and almost feels like a theatrical soap opera for the time. That's how I would word it. It's melodramatic in the best possible way. I think it's a dangerous play.
Ooh, that's the title.
How would you describe it, Lizzie?
Ooh, I think at the heart of it, it's a really fascinating story where you get a firsthand look into how people use intimacy as a weapon to get what they want. So you see these really deep relationships on stage with these people that clearly have a history, but the entire time as the audience, you're wondering, you know, is this sincere that we're watching right now, or are they finding ways to use each other? And it makes the audience an active participant in trying to decipher and figure out who these characters are, what they want, and whether they're doing something on you right now to get what they want. So I would say for anyone out there that really loves like a high stakes drama with like really morally complex characters, as well as having that fabulous period aesthetic of French aristocracy, like this is the show for you.
And aesthetically, you are leaning into the period setting. You're not taking a more contemporary approach to it.
No, it is set in the original time period. I think that the French Revolution like plays a big part in setting the stage of like, it's almost like you're seeing what's about to happen to these people because we know history, we know like looking back, like how this takes place just before all of that. And I think that's part of what makes this story interesting for me. So even though you could definitely modernize it like Cruel Intentions did for the film version, one of the adaptations, I think it's the most intriguing set in its proper time period. And also the costume designer in me is just like thrilled to be working on these pieces. That is part of the joy for me of piecing it all together aesthetically. So I also had a secondary reason for not wanting to move the time period.
Not to give too many spoilers, but Tatum has created some fantastic costume pieces in addition to being the director / producer / world builder extraordinaire. Like really something visually, it's a feast, to put it mildly.
No, I'm sure. And based on the production or promotional photos that I've seen so far, it does certainly look like it's going to be a treat to experience the world that you have crafted.
Shout out to Mariah Campbell, who does our photos, like all the promotions have been done by her. And she's just captured definitely the vibe and the essence that we were trying to bring to the piece, like just so lusty and seductive and really leaning into the juice of the piece. So I'm thrilled with the way the photo shoot went.
So Tatum, I guess this is more so a question for you, but Lizzie, feel free to chime in if you have thoughts as well. How and when did you decide that this show would be Wren's next project? And what specifically is it about the material that drew you in?
So this has been in the works for about 2 years, not consistently being worked on, obviously, because we've been doing other things, but I've never seen this on stage before. I've read the play. I read the play in the past, obviously. And then I'd seen the original film with Glenn Close and John Malkovich. And then I've seen Cruel Intentions. And that's kind of the extent of my relationship with the material for the origin. I remember when I met Devin Bell, because he was the first person that signed on to this project with me. I was working with him on The Elephant Man, and he just was how I saw this character. He was really the catalyst for me of wanting to do this play, because I've always known that I wanted to have a younger Valmont. There's a line in the play where he's talking about Madame de Volanges and how he's had this sexual relationship with her, and he's now like sleeping with her daughter. Right. And it's said during this scene. And I flagged that as like, depending on how old he was when that took place, that could really like emotionally scar somebody. Like if she was like an aristocrat that is like, say like 28 or 30 at the time, and he was this 15-year-old boy, I felt like it would add this like complexity to that character of why he was able to treat people so carelessly, of how he could treat women as if he didn't care, or because nobody cared about him. Right. And then casting somebody to play Mertoy that is a little bit older than him, and how he would be able to be under her thumb in some way, where she could like steer that ship, I thought could add a level to the piece that I've never seen done before. That it's usually they're of the same age and stuff. So there was a level of that I was intrigued by. So when I met Devin, I was like, this could be a really great match for this project. And then because we're a smaller theater company that's with hopes of growth, it depended on how well our previous shows had done, whether we could afford the rights or whether we could do this production, because it's an expensive piece, right? So we decided to do Little Women first, and then we would move on to this to be our next show. And also that's when I met Jess on Little Women. And I was like, oh my gosh, we found our Mertoy. So that was kind of like the slow evolution of like why it was timeline wise, and also just the right ingredients, like time to tell the story. It's very timely. Like, I mean, it's so relevant to today. I was thinking about, what's his name? Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And that's what I think of when I read this story. And I just think like, it might be different in subtle ways, but I mean, it's the same thing. It's two people that have predatory instincts that are willing to do anything to put people in harm's way to get what they want. And that's what this play is about. It's very timely.
Thanks for unpacking all of that. I feel like I have my list of questions here, and check. You're going through a lot of them that I'm fun. No, it's fine. This is great. I actually want to touch on something that's not on the question list because you just put it on my head by mentioning here, but it's I think this idea of a younger Valmont is interesting for this piece because I imagine most people's immediate frame of reference for the story is that the main film version. There was also another film version that I think came out like a year or two like before or after at the same time that that was not as well received, but like the main version, which Christopher Hampton wrote the screenplay for as well, Stephen Frears directed, we picture John Malkovich in our heads when I think we think of this character, and I have absolutely no idea how old John Malkovich was when they filmed this movie, but his face has not changed. He looks exactly the same in that movie as he does now as an old man. And I think we kind of tend to think of this as an older character. This idea of sexual initiation is a recurring thing throughout the film that, as I think that touches on what you were just talking about of what was his sexual initiation and how is that kind of manifesting throughout the way he engages with other characters here. I don't know if I have a question about this, but I think it's just very interesting that, it's not a character that I would have ever thought to make young in this way. So did you find that working with Devon gave you the idea that the character should be young, or did you always imagine that he should be?
It's not even that I imagined that the character should be young. I just thought it would be interesting to present him in that way. I think it definitely works with him being an older man for sure. Like it obviously does because the movie is an Oscar-winning film, it's amazing. But I just I'm always interested in trauma, like what drives people to do these horrible things, because we're not born horrible, things usually come from some sort of background that has led us to this place of feeling like we feel justified in getting one for ourselves. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I'm sorry, this is going to hurt you, but it's my turn. And I find that very, very fascinating. And I also think manipulation is a topic that I visit in a lot of my projects. That was also a part of the Drowning Girls when we did that show, which was them being manipulated by George Joseph Smith. I find that topic fascinating. And I think that, like I said, like having an older Mertoy that might be pulling the strings differently, if you're viewing the piece as a meeting of minds between two great villains, but one of them is actually under the influence of the other one, and you can sort of see that right from the get-go. I think it adds another layer of complexity when you're working with material that has been seen before. I'm always thinking, what are you going to add to it? Like, are we just doing this just because, everybody does this play and it's a great play and it's well written and all that stuff? You can, for sure. But what could be an interesting spin that might make it interesting to people that have seen that play before?
I think you're touching on something interesting that leads very elegantly into my next question about this comparative gaze or frame of reference that people bring to works like this. And especially if you're somewhat mandated, at least partly, to do classical works, there is an expectation that there will be different kinds of audiences with different levels of familiarity. This is just a little kind of funny thing, but Wren Theatre has had a bit of a curious track record, to say the least, about producing shows that have been or are being done elsewhere in Ontario during the same seasons. Yeah. You just mentioned the Drowning Girls, which notably your 2023 production coincided with the same season as the Guild Festival doing the same. And this appears to have been the case as well with Dangerous Liaisons. You say you've never seen it performed on stage before, and yet the Stratford Festival is doing it this year. Granted, they're not officially opening until August, but what funny timing, I guess this kind of thing is. I guess I have to ask, and sorry if this is a silly question, but how far into this process of creating were you when you saw Stratford drop their season announcement, and what was your immediate reaction to seeing it?
Well, I mean, it's funny because so to answer the first part of that, we announced it it was on our website for about a year that we were going to be doing it coming up. But I mean, unless you go on our website, you're not going to see that, right? So it's just, we didn't put it on our Instagram or anything. And then we announced it in December. And then I think their show was announced in January or something. Mm-hmm. And it was the same day, if you can believe this, that we were taking a tour of the Annex Theatre to solidify that space. And Devon was the one that came in. He's like, did anybody see what Stratford just launched on their thing? But the truth is, I think I said this actually on Phil Rickaby's Stage Worthy podcast when this accidentally happened before, is that two things. Every production of a play is going to be different depending on who's putting it on, right? It's the same material, but it's different artists. It's a different take. It's different sets. It's different costumes. It's different everything. It's a different concept. There's something that everyone can offer a piece that is exciting and makes it worth going to see different people's interpretation. I was so excited to go and see The Drowning Girls at Guild Festival. It was a beautiful production. It was very different than ours. It was a completely different vibe. And it's what made it exciting to watch, seeing what they wanted to bring out of it and how they interpreted the material. It's the same with Stratford. It's going to be gorgeous, obviously. Their productions are stunning. It's Stratford, and I'm under no illusions that someone's like, oh, I was thinking about going to Stratford, but I hear Wren's doing it. Maybe we won't go to Stratford. Do you know what I mean? It's for people that don't feel like traveling all that way, we're doing it in Toronto. It is 3.5 hours away from us. So I'm going to get a ticket and go for sure because I'm dying.
How could you resist?
No, I'm dying to see what they do with it. It looks fantastic. I more get concerned about local Toronto theater and never wanting to do something that is at the same time as a show that's currently running, because you want everyone to have the same opportunity to sell tickets for their show and get people to see all the great work that they're doing. Even with things like The Drowning Girls, when we realized that show was going on, we made sure not to drop any advertising that was going on while their show was going. And then when they wrapped that show, then we started advertising. So, you do the best you can when you're working with classic pieces that crowds love. We're all going to do them. You know what I mean? Every theater is going to be oh, we're either doing Pride and Prejudice or we're going to do it's going around all over the place. So
makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it's just funny. And maybe speaking of Pride and Prejudice, that might come up again later. And I think you are right that going to Stratford is expensive. They have 11 shows in their season. Very few people will get to see them all. So if people are just oh, I'd really like to see Dangerous Liaisons, this could be a way for them to prioritize something else at Stratford, maybe. I don't know if that's an unhelpful competitive way of thinking.
End up seeing both of them. I think you're able, the magic of theater and stories that transcend time is that depending, like Tatum was saying, depending on the people that are bringing it to life, everyone's going to have a different end to the story, and it's just naturally going to make it different. I think with this version too, both in terms of Wren's typical style for a show, is that it's really focuses in on the humanity of the individuals we're watching on stage. And there's a certain intimacy. And then being a small up and coming company, out of necessity, we have a certain intimacy with how we approach production. So I think audiences getting an even closer look at the psychological warfare that's taking place on stage and the nuance of it all is going to feel really, really immediate and visceral. And so I'd be curious to see what the comparison is with Stratford for people that end up seeing both productions. But there's always something to gain from as many versions as possible.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, I don't want to say that this is uniquely a Wren problem, because last season, Coal Mine did Hedda Gabler at the same time that Stratford was doing it too.
Funny coincidence. Even with Little Women, there was another production that soon followed ours, and it was just a thing to laugh at. And then also when a few of us went to see it after, and there was still so much to learn that, I totally missed that aspect of the story. That's so cool that they were able to pull that out a bit more.
Usually in contact too with the theater companies that are doing shows at the same time as us, and we try to support each other's show. We had all the Hillcrest players, they that were doing Little Women the musical, they all came and supported our show, which was so beautiful. And then some of our cast went and saw their show. So I mean, I think that it's a beautiful, Toronto is just the independent theater scene is such a beautiful community where everybody is really supportive of each other. And I think that if you do find yourself in a situation like that, I mean, just doing whatever you can to help support the other show as well. I don't think Stratford needs our support, but you know what I mean? I'm just saying that if it's a local theater, we always try to do that. And we're always excited to see what's going on in the city.
Yes.
It clearly shows that like there's a cultural demand for this particular story for whatever reason. If multiple people are like, oh, this needs to be told right now. So it's good to know that we're on the money in that sense.
Yeah, excellent point. And yeah, and I like what you're saying about how this isn't a competition thing. It's not, oh no, they're doing the same show. We must be the better one and we must crush them and get people to see ours instead of theirs. We're all in this together. The fact that you're cultivating an exciting experience where you can see two different versions of the same thing and compare them and have dialogue about what they mean, and that you're supporting the other companies. I've often wondered how something like that had a Gabler situation happens. Like, do the artistic directors of these major companies not like have a meeting of the five families and get on the same page about what they're producing that season? I guess not, but it's understandable that the big diversity of indie companies are going to have situations like this more often than not, or more often than you'd think it would.
We'll never understand the private conversations of the bigwigs behind closed doors.
So, Lizzie, you're playing the role of Émilie in this show. And so tell us a little bit about this character and what has been your process for crafting her.
Ooh, the big thing with our version of Dangerous Liaisons, as we've been mentioning, is it has that aesthetic of the French aristocracy and it's super saturated in that time of a world just obsessed with seduction and manipulation. So I've really been trying to lean into that and making a character that's larger than life. So Émilie is a courtesan, so like a high-end escort for the main character, Valmont. So she only has 2 scenes. And so making those as big and larger than life as possible was definitely a priority, as well as just making them stand out a little bit. I think what's interesting about Émilie is that she, in comparison to the other characters, is not an aristocrat. So she comes from a very different walk of life. She knows how to behave around these groups of people, but they have not had the same origin stories and coming up in the same way. And so I think what I really have leaned into as well is that as much as sex is so often used in this story as a weapon, for her, in addition to that, it's also like a currency. And that gives her a bit more freedom to have agency in a way that other characters don't have to. I've always been saying to myself, like, whatever game is being played, at the end of the day, whether you think Emily's won or lost, she's still getting paid. And so playing with that fearlessness has been really, really fun. And as both like a performer, but also as a woman, it's been quite liberating to play a character like that doesn't feel confined to the societal expectations. And it's made her a bit of a wild card as well. So I think in the same way that you see all the other characters playing with like private self versus public self, she's just kind of like, this is me, I am what I am, in like regardless of setting. And so it gives a nice contrast in that sense. But it's been I tend to make playlists for all of my characters. So it's a lot of Sabrina Carpenter, if that gives the audiences an idea of what to expect. I do a lot of visual like vision boards on like Pinterest for them. And so it's been fun to do some digging and figure out what aesthetic and style I want to give her for a period play that's like has a layer of contemporary like element to it. Yeah.
Nice. Tatum, how much have you been giving as the director TLC to cultivating this character? Is this everything that Lizzie you've just described, or has this been the result of your own going off privately, journaling, figuring out what you want the character to be, or has this been an ongoing discussion between the two of you?
Well, I mean, for this, it's been interesting because Lizzie has double duty, right? Like she's also our intimacy director, brilliant intimacy director. Like I have to say, like that should be like a whole part of this topic, like because she's just like,
yes. So I have questions about that, so don't you worry.
She's really just like incredible, next level talented. Because she's doing double duty, I was surprised at how fully formed Émilie showed up almost right off the go. And I think I mean, Lizzie, you can be the one to like mention if this is like true or not, but it just seemed to me as the director that it was because you knew you had such a massive job of directing these other scenes that it's like you did all of that work right off the top that usually like you find slowly over time. And yes, the character has evolved and it has like grown into like the Émilie that you're going to see on stage. But like there was such a strong foundation right off the hop that I think was very impressive. I didn't really feel like I had to add much to that whatsoever. It was more like, can you come in stage left? Like, is more stuff like that, like directing traffic a little bit. But I feel that way with a lot of my actors that I feel privileged to be able to work with at Wren, or our main company actors. I've cast them because I want them to bring what they have to the role. And I want to see their interpretations of who they think these people are. So yes, I do obviously get in there and work with the actors and everything, but I'd say 75% of the job is brought by them. And I like to work with what they're giving. And I find that is just my own personal preference of how I work with actors.
And I'm sure your actors appreciate that, because many people have worked with micromanaging directors that can be good in its own right for different reasons. But I'm sure, Lizzie, you're nodding. Do you appreciate this style of directing?
It values like the actor also, and any other position like designer, stage manager, etc., as an artist themselves too. And I think it takes a lack of ego and a whole lot of generosity as an artistic director and as a leader, which like Tatum has like time and time shown again of, this is my clear vision for what I have for this show, but I am looking for other people to add on to it. And I'm okay if like certain things have to shift and change, or if it's very like best idea always wins. And it's a good thing if it's coming from as many different people as possible at different times. And you don't always get that in spaces, depending on like personalities or budget or time constraints. So it definitely feels like a luxury. And I feel like everyone is bringing their best work and really feeling that they're valued across the board as an artist, rather than just arrive, stand in your mark, and say the line that's written.
Yeah, that's what we'd like to hear. Mm-hmm. Since this topic was brought up, we might as well go into this now. You are also double dutying as the intimacy director, and boy, would this show have your work cut out for you in that respect. What has been your process engaging in that domain of this performance?
I mean, we've been talking about it a little bit throughout this conversation, but it's just the layers of it all. So it's really giving clear, simple baseline for the actors of a shared language almost of how to talk about the intimacy, how to talk about their boundaries and what they're comfortable with, and really giving them the tools and the language to advocate and put themselves in the driver's seat. I think similar to Tatum's directorial style, I really tried to come in off the top with, you as actors are the experts of your characters. So what that means for their emotional, mental tactics, it's the same thing for their physicality. And then also working with their public self. So how they show intimacy as a way to get something, but also how they're tender and intimate in an authentic way where they're maybe risking something a little more in regards to their heart. And so working one-on-one with each of the pairings that we're going to be doing some intimacy throughout the show, it was really just important to gain that level of understanding with not only their characters, but what their actor bodies needed to feel super comfortable. So it was a lot of establishing like the boundary practice, tapping in and out, de-rolling, taking care of the actors so that they could feel empowered to bring what they wanted to the character in the story. And then from there, of course, once we had that language, adding some choreography that made it fine-tuned. If we landed on a certain thing that we wanted to include in a scene, providing details on tempo, on masking, so that it really created that experience for the audience as well. But I think you can tell as an audience too, when an actor is working from a place of feeling empowered and respected, it just makes everyone that much more available to the work. So it was keeping myself as open-minded to it as I was asking the actors and the creative team as well. Very collaborative.
When you first found out that you were going to have this role in the production, was your immediate thought is, ooh, so much fun stuff to work on? Or was it, oh my God, this show, this role?
I will say, I think what was helpful for Émilie is a lot of her scenes are quite physical. So it was just through building the choreography that I was able to find the character. That was kind of the order that things fell into place. So it made it a bit more manageable, but it definitely feels like a little juggling two different sets of balls, but we're making it work. If anything, like I have just been spoiled with the actors that we have that are just so willing to try anything, stay on their feet, really open about what they envision for the scene. And so whether I was acting in the scene or providing some guidance as the intimacy director, I felt like I was very supported as much as I was able to provide support as well, hopefully.
Dangerous Liaisons feels like the kind of play where the intimacy director is likely to get mentioned in reviews, which doesn't happen often enough, but it's the kind where it's an element of the show that we feel it palpably and we want to make sure it's done well.
I feel like there are some behind the scenes roles where you're like, it's a compliment if it's if you can't tell or if you can't notice that work was done to make it. But with this particular show, I feel like the way that the intimacy, it just draws attention to itself very explicitly, not only for like the way it's written and the acting itself, but like how the characters are using it. Keeping that in mind, it was definitely on my radar.
Your work is on display. And I think one kind of elephant in the room way that this is especially on display is that there's quite a bit of sexual violence in the show as well. Has that been a unique challenge to engage with in this practice?
Yes, because I think it's that hard line to draw, considering not only the actors, but also the audience, of how to not shy away from what is happening so that you're trying to make it something that it's not, really owning a moment for what it is, even if it is uncomfortable or unpleasant, but knowing the difference between uncomfortable and being unsafe, both for what an audience can handle, but also for how the actors in the space should work. Meeting the actors where they were at was really, really important, taking it at the pace that they were comfortable, but also not putting too much of a weight behind it. This moment for your character should feel charged, but for you as an actor, it should feel like choreography that you're following. And at the end of it, when you're tapping out, you're able to shake it off and be yourself at the end of the day. Really making those boundaries clear was super important. This is when we're in the scene working on it. This is when we're out of it. These are two different people, two different places. And that's been an ongoing thing too. Like even outside of the show, like there are a couple different ways of like checking in that the actors can all use so that they never feel like they just have to go along with what's being staged. They really feel like they're taking the lead and I'm supporting it in a way that makes them feel the most comfortable. And hopefully that translates to an audience as well.
Lizzie and I had like a bunch of conversations also right off the top about the material. And we're both sort of on the same page about if you're afraid of the material, like it's written in the script, you cannot do your best work and you can't do justice to a story if you're afraid of what's written and you're not going to bring life to the story, right? Mm-hmm. And you want to be respectful to the audience so that it's something that they are able to digest and watch. But if you shy away from certain things, it's not actually going to do any justice to anybody. You know, like the point of making the story of like the sexual manipulation is such a deep-rooted part of both the original novel and the play by Christopher Hampton that I think you just need to commit and do it tastefully, I think is what we agreed upon right off the hop.
Yeah. And I think being really clear about why this moment is happening and what it serves to the story so that it's not just in there to be upsetting or be uncomfortable, hopefully in a way that allows the audience to still have a critical conversation about it instead of feeling like they have to go inward as a way to protect themselves, which can sometimes happen with more difficult scenes, particularly ones that like feel a bit unrelenting in terms of their intensity. How do we balance showing the thing for what it is while also knowing how to pace it and give space to it so it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming both actor and audience?
I think that this play also has like the good thing is about the way that Lizzie has staged things is that like the point is made, but it doesn't linger. You know what I mean? It's like the moments are all there and they all do like the point is made and it's done very tastefully. And we don't hold the audience there for any ridiculous sort of like amounts of time to be like, watch this. It's really uncomfortable. It's more like it happens. It serves the story. It's done properly and it's moved on from there. Because I don't even like, I mean, I don't like to go see theater where I'm sitting there thinking, why am I in here? Like, why am this is like, I'm so uncomfortable right now, and not in the good way of starting conversation. Just, I don't want to be in here. Wren Theatre won't ever be producing shows that are done in that manner.
Mm-hmm. And I think in my experience, seeing shows like this or being in various creative processes, that's the value of female creatives on that side of the table. When you have a male director, and especially hopefully this isn't the case that there's like a male intimacy director, because hopefully the intimacy director does their job properly regardless, but you tend to notice male directors making more of a spectacle of these kinds of things, that there is an element of male gaze titillation, even if it's textually something awful that's happening, it still gets drawn out maybe longer than it should have for the supposed enjoyment of a supposed male audience, which is a horrible thing to think about. So I appreciate what you're saying about how this is just getting enough to convey the point without needing to draw it out gratuitously or in any kind of unnecessary length.
Yeah. As well as empowering both character and actor, so that the character still to the audience feels like a human rather than the thing that's happened to them or the thing that is happening to them. Keeping the focus on supporting them, character and actor, through that is really important as well.
And it's a difficult needle to thread, that the actors doing their job need to, on one level, sell that the characters are doing this thing, that they are perhaps in danger, that these things are happening, that they are reacting in a real way to that. But yet the audience also can't believe that the actors are experiencing that danger themselves, because that would create some sort of semiotic rupture that would make it difficult to watch what we are experiencing here.
So a lot of the scenes hopefully will feel very, very real for an audience. But for the actors, I think the best feedback I've received is that they feel very technical on the inside. I'm like, I'm following the counts, the choreography. I breathe in this way at this time. And it all comes together to, again, create that distance, but still feed into the story.
It's really hilarious, actually, during the rehearsals. Say like any of the scenes that you staged, Lizzie, with Devin and Lizette, who Lizette plays Madame de Tourvel in this production, where they'll be doing this like really intense scene where there's something like some sort of romantic thing happening. And then Lizette will pull back and be like, Lizzie, I just need clarification on this one thing. Is it like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4? And it's just like all counts, you know what I mean? And yet you're watching this thing seconds ago and it looks so like dramatic and crazy, but then you realize just how broken down and technical it is a dance.
I appreciate this peek behind the curtain to know that that's how it's done, but I will also appreciate watching it and being able to forget that because of just how well they are executing this very well-timed, well-paced, metronomic sequence of exactly what they need to do to be safe with each other in these very fraught or intense moments on stage. So you've mentioned quite a few of the other collaborators that you have on this production. Do you maybe just want to go through a bit of who else is involved in this, how you maybe assembled this team, and how generally, apart from what we've already discussed, how rehearsals have been going so far?
Yes. So we have Liam Cardinal, who is our lighting and sound designer. He has just created the most incredible soundscapes for this show. Like, we were working on all of the cues over the last 2 weeks, and like, it's going to sound beautiful. I'm just so excited for audiences to see what he's come up with. And then we have Sirhat, who's our incredible set designer, who has done an amazing job of working with the space that is there, because the Annex Theatre is so beautiful, right? You've got those gorgeous staircases and you already look like you're in a grand salon and you haven't even done anything yet, right? So he's done this great job of designing an idea that is working with the space and just adding these elements in that will really tell the story and fill in, the audience can fill in the gaps, which has been great. And then we have Marissa Rasmussen, who is our assistant director on this particular production. And she's also our executive director at Wren. And it's always such a thrill to work with her. She gives the best notes, don't you think, Lizzie?
Very, again, like an actor's dream. So detailed, very like character motivated. So it makes it very easy to insert into the story.
Yeah. No, she's wonderful. Yep. Rehearsals have been going really incredible. It's such a great it's always a great collaboration to be working with this group of artists. Like we've got a couple new people with us for this production, which is very exciting. We've got Caitlin Doyle, who's playing Cecile. We've got Shannon Petrie, who is playing Madame de Volanges. It's so hard to remember all these French names. What is she? She's Madame de what? Madame de Volanges. We have Lucas Blakely, who's playing the Chevalier d'Ancenis. Am I forgetting anyone that's new? Anyone else that's new with us, Lizzie? I think that's everyone that's new.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, we have our fight director.
Yes, we have our fight director. Yeah, Jack Davidson, who we are so thankful to have with us. He is choreographing the most thrilling sword fight. And I'm just, yes, for those listening, there is this sword fight. So exciting. Actually, that's where I'm going after here. I'm going to be going to Randolph to watch him stage some of that right after this.
Wow, fantastic. The swashbuckling afternoon ahead of you.
Yes. It's going to be so thrilling. And he's just come up with such great ideas about like not just choreographing a fight scene, but like figuring out how it informs the story and what are the subtleties of why this sword fight is happening, which is really, really exciting. I love his attention to detail for all of that. So we're thrilled to be working with him as well. But getting back to what I was saying before, the rehearsals have been going really great. I just love working with this group. Definitely some great ideas tossed around from all the actors. Like there is so much of everybody in this show. It's not my vision solely. Like there's just constant ideas coming in from Jess McQueen, Devin Bell, everybody, that have created this thing together as a group that I feel very, very proud of. I hope the cast and crew leave this project feeling really good about the work they've done, because I couldn't dream of it going any better from a creative standpoint. So
nice. I've heard you mention in other interviews, actually, that you think of Wren as somewhat of a repertory company. So how do you feel that spirit of rep theater imbues the type of work you do?
I like just having a shorthand with everybody. And I like people feeling really comfortable to share their ideas. And I feel like that happens with multiple times that you work with people. You just get more, you know each other better, you know what people's strengths are, and it just creates a very healthy workspace. And also at the core of me, I do this because I'm an artist and I want to tell a story, but I also want to have a good time. Like I do this because I enjoy this so much on every level. And part of that is putting people around you that you enjoy seeing every day. I love and care about everybody that's a part of Wren so much. And it's been growing. I think we have about 35 people or something that are with us now, which is really exciting over the years that we've just got such a great group around us. But that's why I kind of treat it like rep is I like seeing the same faces all the time, and being a part of a team. Definitely that's I think what it is I'm not a lone wolf. Like, you know what I mean? I get my best ideas when I'm collaborating with people. I enjoy that. Usually what happens for me is I'll read the material, or I'll have it read to me because I have dyslexia. So it depends what mood I'm in. Depends on how much effort I want to put in. When I digest the material, I get an instant image in my head and I see the whole thing of the aesthetic of what this world looks like. And I feel like my job as the director is to just share that with everybody and then see what comes out of that. What is the creativity that imbues out of everybody. And we make this like secondary thing, together as like a group. And that excites me. If I was doing everything myself, I honestly don't think I would be doing this at all, because I don't enjoy telling people what to do. That's not something that I enjoy. I like the collaboration. I love it when someone has a better idea than me, which doesn't take much. But when somebody has a better idea than myself and you're just like, yes, you've cracked the code, we're going down that road. It's the best feeling when you feel like you've got that many brains in a room that have, the emotional intelligence to pull something epic off. It's great.
And Lizzie, now that this is your second production of the company, how do you feel about being part of this repertory troupe in a way?
It really feels like a two-way relationship, which is really lovely. I feel like I've grown so much as an actor while also getting to be a part of, either shows I've always really wanted to do, but also with other artists that I'm constantly learning from. It's so nice to have a community like that you can return to. And it is a real game changer of working with people that are not only brilliant at what they do, but are also so kind.
Wow.
The end of the day, because it's like anything around risk in whatever field or whatever thing you're doing. If you are in a space where you feel safe enough to try something, even if it ends up not working, you don't have that fear behind you of, am I going to be judged for this or am I going to be mocked? The discoveries that become available that you just allow yourself to open up to rather than self-censoring or anything like that. I think that's why Wren shows are able to achieve the level that they do. It's deeply collaborative and just so fulfilling. So I definitely feel that on the acting side of it as well.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Going back to, I guess, the technical elements of things, as we were discussing in a previous conversation, I just have a bunch of weird thoughts and technical questions about the actual adaptation itself, if you will indulge my silly dramaturgy brain about this kind of thing. Okay, so right off the bat, I'll say just this, going back to, we've mentioned that this is a heavily adapted source, that it's had many different versions, including at least 3 film versions, possibly even more that we're not even aware of. And I guess, well, before I get into the questions, let's just start with, what has the research process been in bringing this piece? Or are you the type of director, Tatum, who does a lot of research, or do you just sort of live in the play? Do you like to go back to the period? Do you like to read literary criticism about this work? How do you kind of engage with it from whatever flanks you choose?
Yeah, well, it depends on the play, like the amount of research. Like, it's not like one way for me, because some, like, well, for this show specifically, if you look at it as it's a novel by Sheldreau Delaclue, it's like, it's written as a play very differently than that novel, right? Like, they're not the same. So in the book, like, you're dealing with, I think, 20 letters that are sent like back and forth. These people never meet. It's all correspondence. And I don't know how you would pull that off as a play and make that interesting. It would just be people at their desks being like, Madame de Tourvel, oh, Valmont, blah, blah, blah. It wouldn't be very interesting, you know? Well, I mean, maybe somebody could make it interesting, but it doesn't occur to me that it would be crazy interesting.
I'm curious, did you see Letters from Max in a theater season or 2 ago that Necessary Angel put on? But it's there is a precedent for these types of, not specifically taking an epistolary novel in this way, but making letters theatrically dynamic, I suppose.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
It's a Sarah Rule play based on a book of like actual letters that she published between her and a friend of hers and former student of hers who since passed away from a rare juvenile disease. But yeah, there are ways of making letters interesting. I don't want to necessarily discount the possibility of that, but I agree that that's not the approach that Hampton took in his adaptation here.
I think it's just because of the sexual seductive nature of the play, I think, is what throws me off, is that the letters are written in a way where it's like, you want to see that go down. Like, you know, it's not just about talking about what once was. It's like, you're talking about like stuff that would be juicy on stage, like, and you're not seeing it, you're talking about it. Right. So he's changed the format, the vehicle in which the story is told in the play. And also the ending is very different, right? The ending is different from the book to the play, and the film is based more on the book. So of the ending, right? So yeah, like there are like some differences. So to answer your original question of, do I do the research? It's like, I started off with the novel and then realized that the novel wasn't going to help me because the play is so different, that I found that the answers were more just in reading the text and play, and then doing research of the time period as a whole, and not necessarily on Sheldreau and like why this soldier decided to write this scandalous novel that came out of nowhere and scandalized Paris, you know? I just wonder what those conversations must have been like, people being like, is this based on real people? And if so, who are they? So yeah, it changes from project to project, I'd say. Was there a secondary part to that question?
I guess the part that I was getting to, but I think you kind of already are addressing it, is this element of the form, the genre, the personal correspondence of it all, because it is interesting. Letters still feature very prominently in the narrative of how Hampton has interpreted it, because letters are part of that narrative, but they're no longer the medium through which we experience it. And I think you touch on something really interesting about how this is such an embodied story that has all these people engaging as bodies with each other's bodies throughout all of this. So the disembodied medium of the letter almost feels like, well, it leaves a lot to the imagination, which could be certainly interesting when you're sitting in your armchair reading a novel, which you are forced to do anyway. It's, putting it in theater, you kind of want to find that embodiment to remove it from the disembodied form of the letters. And like intercepting letters is kind of very interesting because that is something that comes up a lot in the plot, how it's very different to hear that, oh, I've stolen this letter and I'm going to give this letter to another person, hearing about that, versus when you're reading the book, like, oh, I'm reading the letter that was intercepted. And that it's, I don't know. Again, I don't know if I have a specific concrete thought or question about this, but I just find when I first read Hampton's version, which was before I'd ever seen the film, I was kind of struck with, well, he got very creative with this, but he found the story through it. And I think on one hand, it feels like it changes things so radically because it feels like the form is so inherent to what the story is and how it's told, and yet he found a way to tell it, and it is more or less the same story, but found a more conventionally dramatic or theatrical language for it.
Yeah. And the writing is brilliant. Like this thing is just written in a way that is so, like, you're just so gripped from start to finish. And actually, Lizzie sent me this meme a couple of weeks ago that still has me in stitches, that was about Pride and Prejudice. And I think the tagline was something like, just a bunch of people talking in each other's living rooms.
It was a review of the book that I saw online. They're not wrong.
It cracked me up so much because I was like, this is sort of what could be said about this play. It's just a bunch of people going to each other's salons to have conversations about bad things they're deciding to do to people. But like the writing makes it so gripping. And you're hanging on every word the entire time, that it doesn't feel like that's what you're watching. You're watching some serious plotting going on. And he's written it in a way where these two despicable people that we should all hate, like we should all be like, these people are awful, lock them up, or like guillotine them or something, you know? We're rooting for some of them, like in a weird way. Like, you know what I mean? Like I find myself when there's a monologue that Martoy has in Act 1 where the mask sort of slips a bit, and she talks about her origins of like, what I asked was how you became like this. And she goes into this narrative of how she became sort of this vicious person that is capable of these things, which I won't get into in case anybody's going to come to the show. It sort of gives you a glimpse of, I wonder what your life was. Like, I wonder why, you know, like you just get a little hint. And I feel like after that, like before that point, you're sort of just like, what a cruel character and a cruel woman. And then that monologue starts and you're sort of like, I don't know how to feel now. I don't know what I'm feeling. I think that's the brilliance of his writing, is that you still have this sort of connection, even though you're thinking, I hate you. I really hate you. You know?
And I think, I guess you're making me realize something very interesting about the writing here for, these are despicable people. Why do we so easily get invested in this plot and this conflict? And I think this certainly comes from the original novel, but I think the way that Hampton structured the material really puts a fine point on this, is that Valmont and Martoy are both terrible, but one of them's going to win, is how this sort of wager that they've set up animating the conflict. So it's not like this is a battle between good and evil. It's two, I don't want to maybe go as far as say evil, but it's like two bad people. You pick the horse that you find less despicable, at least in your own personal engagement with who do I want to see be more successful. And maybe you don't want either of them to be, but there isn't really an outcome where neither of them ends with some kind of win condition, I guess, even though, well, not to spoil too much about the ending, but maybe that also gets thrown into question a bit.
Yeah. And the fact also that, like, because it is like one of the great coming togethers of two people, like two evil minds, it's like the fact that one of them is a woman, to me, is so interesting. It's so interesting because we see so many classical pieces where it's like a woman that's done wrong by a man, or like, there's that story, but for another woman to not have good intentions for other women, to say like, I don't mind putting you in harm's way if it's going to give me what I want. Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. Like, it's not right. It's not good. It's not any of those things. But when you're watching it in like this sort of a forum, it's so fascinating to think what kind of mind is capable of that. What kind of life leads somebody to be able to sacrifice one of your own, for what you want. I think a lot of women there's sort of like a girl code, of like, we've got each other's back. Like, we have each other, even if no one else has ours. But like a story like this, where you realize that there are people out there that don't, and you've just come into contact with one, and she doesn't care about having your back. That's a very interesting character to see in theater.
Mm-hmm. I feel like since we've done all this praising of Hampton's writing, this next question probably answers itself, but I'll ask it anyway, because the original novel is in the public domain and Hampton's dramatization is not. So was there any point in this process, or at least early in this process, when you considered crafting your own adaptation as opposed to using this very well established pre-existing one?
No, I never looked into that. We were thinking about doing that with Little Women, actually. And we've been talking about doing that again if we remount the production of doing our own version of that show. And also Jane Eyre. We're going to be doing Jane Eyre in the future, and that will be like a Wren original adaptation of it. But the truth is, when it comes to this piece, because like we already talked about the letters, that the original source material is written through these letters that are going back and forth, I feel like Hampton has found the code that is like what makes this piece work on stage. And if I went back to like the original novel and tried to reimagine it, I feel like the only way would be to reimagine it in a similar fashion. And I'm sure that my writing would not be as brilliant as Christopher Hampton's writing. So,
Give yourself some credit.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I know. It's an Olivier Award-winning play. It won a bunch of Tonys. He wrote the film version, and that won a bunch of Oscars. Like, I mean, I'm only going to give myself so much credit before it seems ridiculous.
Sure. No, that's fair. Okay, I think you did already give an answer to this last liaison specific question that I had here, but as a capstone on this conversation, I'll bring it up anyway, because this is a story that is quite literally almost 250 years old. And I asked you before, what drew you to the material, and you kind of said a lot of things that I think do resonate with our contemporary world. But let's just, as a final summation of this, what do you think makes this play resonate today? Or to phrase it as a dramaturg would, why this play now?
Well, I think that the simplest way of summing that up, I'd say, is as long as people are ego-based creatures, that we haven't found a cure for getting rid of narcissism and all of that, it will always be a relevant story. I just think that people are people. You put them in a different time period, we're still talking about the same issues. It just looks like different packaging. So that's my take on that. I think that it will always be relevant as long as human beings are on the earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lizzie?
I think it's just a very important examination on how people wield power over each other and the consequences of losing that empathy when it's stripped from human connection, but also not being able to see another human being in front of you as a person. I think especially right now, it's become very, very tempting to have the mentality of everyone for themselves to get by. And so this is a great piece to kind of expose the consequences of that and what can happen when you go too far down that path. And then also looking at power dynamics on a grand scale, culturally and in larger social settings, but also in intimate one-on-one encounters of what do power dynamics look like in those exchanges, and maybe hopefully offering the audience time to reflect on where they might see that in their own lives as well. I think that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's good. These are such good, like, timeless type themes that you have both sort of touched on here. To maybe zero in a little more on a timeliness aspect to it, Tatum, you mentioned Jeffrey Epstein earlier, and I think if we're noticing that maybe more productions of this are coming about right now, there is a bit of a maybe post-Me Too undercurrent that might be animating why this piece feels particularly relevant. Do you think that's something that is maybe part of it, and is it something that has been a topic of discussion in your rehearsal room?
Yeah, I mean, the subject of choice and consent, is throughout the entire play, pretty much, especially when dealing with the character of Cecile. So Lizzie and I, we talked about that right off the bat about leaning how far we wanted to go in that direction based on things like Me Too and all of that. I think, unfortunately, it's just so depressing to think that we've only been talking about that really hardcore for the last few years, but it's been an issue since women were alive, and the, predatory behavior. And I myself, without wanting to get too much into it, I've had my own abuse from childhood that is one of the reasons why I always feel it's important to shine light on stories like this that deal with subject matter like that, because people need to have a greater understanding about the effects that can have on people. And the only way is through stories and through telling those stories, in either in theater or in podcast interviews or whatever. Right. So
I think it offers a really good microscope for, yes, how power is wielded in abusive ways over people on a large scale, but also the really minute, nuanced ways that maybe fly under the radar. I feel like that's sometimes missing in those conversations of what are these small microaggressions that are feeding into a larger system. And until we really resolve and come to terms with those behaviors that are being allowed to fly under the radar, we will, again, time and time, find history repeating itself or morphing into different problems or manifesting in different ways.
Thank you. Well, very well said, both of you. So that's all of the Dangerous Liaisons specific questions I had. Before we move on to the one last thing I want to get to, unrelated to the show, where and when can people see it, and where can they find tickets?
So the show runs at the Annex Theatre from May 27th to June 7th. And you can get tickets either on our Instagram page in our bio, or you can go to rentheatre.com and you can purchase tickets there. We really hope you come, because we're really proud of it.
Okay, and we will put the ticket link in the description of this episode so people can find it very easily if everything they've heard here excites them.
Perfect. Oh, and also, one last thing. This show is in English, in case anyone's wondering.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
We've had so many people that because we originally had the title as Le Liaison Dangereuse.
As Hampton does.
That's what the novel is, And we had so many emails of people being like, is this a French play? Well, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, Lizzie, people might think that this is a French play and might feel like they won't understand and they might not come. I'm like, we need to change this to Dangerous Liaisons staff.
Even my friends that reached out to me were like, oh, I didn't know you were doing it in French. And I went, when in my 28 years have I ever claimed to speak the French language?
If there's anyone watching, please, it's in English.
Yeah.
It's in English.
That's actually really funny because I know the play, I know that the title is in French, I know the source it's based on. It hadn't even occurred to me that people might think, and it's kind of not unreasonable of them to think that you see a French title and there is French theater in Toronto, not as much as English theater, but it's a funny assumption. So good move changing the title accordingly, especially since the English title is the movie that most people know. So that's quite funny. Have you considered maybe having French surtitles projected for the people who came thinking it would be French so they could still follow along?
No.
Too much work.
That's interesting, though.
I was like, that's a good idea. We just didn't think of it fast enough.
Oh well, hopefully not too many monolingually French people will show up to see it.
The thing is, we've been showing behind the scenes stuff of us rehearsing and stuff, so people can see on our social media that people are talking in English.
Right.
So I would be shocked if anyone thought at this stage that it was in French, but you never know.
Yeah. You never know. Somebody could just see it on the ticketing website and oh, that's a French thing. I'll see that, having not followed you on social media, not seeing interviews like this. There's only so many ways you can set the record straight.
We're very sorry if that is the case.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I'd like to talk a bit about the future of Wren Theatre, because after Dangerous Liaisons, you have already on your website 3 next productions announced that are currently listed as coming soon. They are Doubt by John Patrick Shanley, Pride and Prejudice, and Clue. Is there anything you can tell us at this early stage about these shows?
I mean, oh my gosh, like I've definitely, I've wanted to direct Doubt for such a long time. Like it's so great. And the only thing I can tell you is that Lizzie is in that one.
Oh, yay.
Yes.
Sister James?
Yes.
Yeah. You just have a way about you.
I actually have an interview today with one of our main company actors who will remain nameless just in case, who's considering taking Father Flynn.
Ooh,
so
exciting.
we're very, very excited to get started on that. The only thing I can really say, because I'm so engrossed in Dangerous Liaisons right now that I can't even tell you if I've got like a vision for it or anything at this point. I'm so in 18th century Paris, France brain right now. It's going to be our first time doing like a full season of like 3 shows. We've only ever done 2 in a year. And before that, we did like the 1. We just remounted it twice. So we're very excited to see Wren have like a full season of like 3 shows, and we're going to see how that goes off. And we hope that people will come and enjoy. Yeah, I feel like that's the most exciting news about the future of Wren, is that we're hoping to be really consistent. We're thinking we're going to be offering like seasons passes for those that are thinking they want to come to like multiple shows. Yeah, the future looks pretty good.
Nice. Yeah, it's wonderful. Doubt is an interesting choice. It is a play that I love, and I think it's really great. But I have a probably not great contrarian view about it, is that now that we have the movie, I've said this on previous episodes, I don't know if we ever need to do the play again. And I hope you can prove me wrong in that opinion. Because
accepted.
Yeah, because I have seen post 2008 stage productions of it, i.e. therefore after the movie. And it's a very good, well-written play, but unless you have Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Viola Davis and even Amy Adams in there, it's hard for me to be convinced that the liveness of it is enough of a trade-off when I could be watching the, in my view, definitive version of it comfortably on my couch. So yeah, challenge accepted.
I mean, it's Meryl Streep. I mean, I totally get that, but we're dealing with the Lizzie Moffatt here.
Yes, that's true.
Which is a big deal.
Don't put me head to head with Meryl.
Well, no, you're up against Amy Adams in this comparison.
Exactly.
I have an actor for Sister Aloysius that is just going to kill this thing. Like, I am just so excited for people to see her in it. We haven't announced anybody yet except for Lizzie, so I can't say who it is yet, but she's been in a couple of our other productions, and she is a force. Like, I'm talking a force.
Okay.
And so thrilled that she's going to do it.
Step aside, Meryl. There's a new sheriff in town.
Not even step aside, but it's just, I just know that she's going to add her own little flavor, her own little tint, you know. I'm excited.
Yeah. Did you see the production from a couple years ago that was staged in Toronto in a church, the Breaking and Entering Theatre company? Deborah Drakeford played Sister Aloysius. Yeah. It was a good production, but I left it thinking I could have just been watching the movie. So
if you'll be open to coming and seeing our show and reviewing our show, I'll look forward to reading at the end whether we succeeded or if you're like, and also in the footnotes didn't or did pull it off.
All right. Yes. Challenge accepted for me from you. We're all challenging each other to open our minds about the potential of doubt. I think part of also my complaint with this too comes from the fact that because it's such a tightly structured script that is still under the copyrighted lock and key of a living author, that I think I would like to maybe see a future, like 50 years from now version of it when people can get weird with it. Right now, I think there's been a lot of sameness in all the versions that I've seen, and they're all kind of just trying to be the movie. But if you can't be the movie, then what else do you have to offer? So I would be curious to see what your production brings to the table here.
Well, I hope I don't let you down.
Yes, I'll be very disappointed if you do. No, I just like seeing live theater. I'll be happy. Similarly, I want to talk about with Pride and Prejudice and Clue. I think the curse that we talked about earlier of your company strikes again here, because Pride and Prejudice, literally as we speak, as we're recording this, I think the run will be done by the time that this episode goes live. The Grand Theatre in London is doing Pride and Prejudice right now. So that's, once again, it just keeps happening.
Our Pride and Prejudice won't be until like February.
Okay, so people will have forgotten that one. And also London's far enough away, and some people do or do not travel that far to see shows.
For sure. I mean, when you're talking about Dangerous Liaisons, I mean, who else just did it? Scarborough Players just did it.
Oh, they did. Okay.
So, I mean, literally, like, it's like these shows, like I said, like the classic plays. I mean, like everybody is like,
they're having a moment.
Somebody is going to do it somewhere, you know. You just want to make sure they're not running at the same time.
Yeah.
But if it's running somebody else's similar season at a later time, I mean, like, it can only do so much.
True. And even Austin is having a moment too. The Stratford in the same season as Dangerous Liaisons is doing Sense and Sensibility. But although I guess Austin is kind of always having a moment. Is anyone ever just like bored with Jane Austen?
Having a moment.
She's been having a 200-year moment. Yeah.
She looks great.
Yeah, she's doing great. Yeah, we love you, Jane. And Clue is the other one that I think actually, when this episode goes live, is the day before opening night for Mirvish is doing the Clue live on stage. So yeah, this just,
great films though. Like, oh my gosh, like I just feel like that's Tim Curry at his finest.
He is wonderful. Do you already have an actor in mind for the Tim Curry butler role?
Yes.
Okay. Looking forward to seeing that.
Yes. The only person that I think I have cast so far in that is Shannon Petrie.
Okay.
She's going to be in there. I don't know who she's playing yet, but her comedic timing is just like next level. I don't know if you've seen her in anything, but she just, like, her facial expressions are priceless. Like, when you come to see this show, like, and she's playing Madame de Volanges, like, what she's able to do with that woman is just, it's hilarious.
Okay, excellent. So I'm looking forward
to
How
far did everybody get with their cup? Or is anybody else almost done their drink?
Mine is empty, but it was just water to begin with.
We're almost there.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to all of those productions, and especially to the most recent one, Dangerous Liaisons, which is going to be very exciting. And if people aren't sold from everything we've said about it here, then I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you just don't like theater, I guess. Before we sign off, I'd like to give you both the opportunity to plug social media handles, websites, anything else you'd like to share, both for Wren Theatre as a company and for yourselves as individual artists, if you would like.
Sure. Yeah, follow us at Wren Theatre on Instagram. Then we also have TikTok. And I don't know what my handle is. My first, I think it's just Tatum Lee 77. I'm checking right now.
Okay. And these will all be in the description of this episode as well.
Tatum Lee 77. You can follow me on Instagram for all of my mundane living.
Fantastic. Lizzie?
You can follow me at Lizzie Moffatt on Instagram. I don't post very often, but I have a good pun there every now and then. So stay tuned.
Yeah, nice. Always love a good pun. And you could find us at COH Theater on Facebook, Twitter, not calling it the other thing, and Instagram. You can find Cup of Hemlock Theater on YouTube, Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast, and all the podcast places you're watching and or listening to this in one of those places. Thanks for coming. Enjoy the show. All right, everyone. That's it for us. Thank you so much, Tatum and Lizzie, for this wonderful interview. And we will see everybody in the next episode. Cheers.
Cheers.